G'day everybody, it's Dave from Wing Chun Mind Force. Another one of my VUS videos. Today I've used a bit of clickbait with the title, One Strike, One Kill. Of course we all like to think about how awesome we are in Wing Chun and how we have superpowers, etc. But that's essentially what it is. I wanted to make this video because one of my friends on the channel asked me to make a video about how I'd use Wing Chun in a fight. And I'm going to make one with some of my students and try to get to the essence of what it's about. But this idea of one strike, one kill is something I've come across from the very start in Wing Chun when I started with my Sifu Jim Fung in Sydney in 1997. I picked up that we had a lot of things, a lot of ideas that were against the idea of sparring, in that you have a long drawn out combat session with somebody where he strikes, you block, you strike, he blocks, you kick, he misses it, you kick again, you keep trying to tag each other and wear each other down and injure each other enough to get them to give up. But Sifu Jim's take on it was that in Wing Chun, our first strike is enough to stop them, enough to drop them. He always said, as soon as you touch somebody, you should break their structure, meaning you take away their balance, take away their strength, take away their ability to hurt you, and leave you the ability to hurt them as much as you feel you need to. And to back that up, you've all heard of the famous 1-inch punch, demonstrated by Bruce Lee, and Sifu Jim demonstrated it quite graphically, but I think both of them used a sort of a theatrical version of it, where somebody was sent flying and busted through a couple of guys who were standing there behind them, or went over a chair, or busted through a bit of a plasterboard. It certainly shows the power, and I'm not doubting at all the power either of them could generate, but I think they were doing that more to just impress ordinary folk on, wow, Wing Chun really hits hard. Especially these days, there's that idea that Wing Chun punches are really weak and you've got to do like 10 a second to be any use. I'm sorry, that's just such an idiotic idea from where I come from in my Wing Chun, and everybody else I know comes from, but that is a very prominent idea that our punches are weak for some reason. But from the very start, Sifu Jim taught us that we can strike extremely hard from very short range. He always called Wing Chun phone box fighting, or stairwell fighting, where you could fight somebody in a phone box, in an elevator, walking down a set of stairs, you get attacked, you can just hop into them. You don't have to have a bit of space. You don't have to get back. So the 1-inch punch is really the symbol for what we do. And the real 1-inch punch drops into somebody like a cannonball, and they should feel the whole body weight emptily pierce them, as if they've been run through by a spear or a sword. That's what we're working towards with all this emptiness and mind state, is to be able to express all our body weight with speed, with focus, from a very short distance. So you don't need a big long punch, big long kick. Now, one of the interesting things we used to do back then was what Sifu called the heart stomping kick. And it's one of those things that I found the real skinny guys could usually achieve it better than the more robust ones, such as myself. But essentially, it's you bring your knee right up beside your head, and your foot stamps down into the chest of the other guy. And I've seen it done well. I've seen Nima King doing it well. It can be done. I mean, I have done it. I'm working towards being skinny enough to do it again. The belly gets in the way. But the point of it is that there's this kick that crushes their rib cage and busts their heart. That's what Sifu told us. So he said that's what it is. And I always took him at his word, and I believe that it must be a tradition in Wing Chun that that's how hard you can hit somebody. You can actually crush the ribs, bust their heart. So it's sort of one kick, one life. You know, you're going to kill somebody if you bust their heart. I told you in my dummy videos that there's a thing called Po Pai, the double-handed palm strike, which I was told meant Wing Chun death strike, where you send all your weight and energy in, and you split the person's spine by one hand sends energy up and one hand sends energy down, and their spine breaks and they're dead as well. Okay, so that's one strike, one kill as well. The Japanese in karate have a tradition called Ikken Hisatsu. Ikken Hisatsu, which essentially means the same thing. In Japanese archery, I was searching and searching for it this morning. I just can't find it. But in Kyodo, the idea is one arrow, one life. And it sort of means, you know, to train, not mucking around. You know, you only ever draw your sword, use your fist, fire an arrow, fire a pistol when you're prepared to take a life. So it has to be an extreme, it has to be life-threatening. That's the only time it's worth fighting for a real martial artist. You shouldn't get engaged in ego fights to show the other guy that you're tougher than him. That's baby stuff. It's okay for kids to do that, but for adults, you might actually kill somebody and you might end up spending many years of your precious life in jail with a whole lot of unpleasant people. Maybe a few pleasant ones, if you're lucky. Another very famous story is that our Sigong, Chu Shong Tin, did engage some of those rooftop 50s fights in Hong Kong, the challenge fights, with other schools. And the story goes that when he got involved, he only struck once and he still held back. But the person that he hit didn't want any more. I remember something about somebody had a welt on his chest for a week afterwards, and one particular opponent just intuitively picked up how powerful he was and said, no, not going to fight you, you've already won, which is a cool story. And I want to tell you a story. I don't know if many people know this one. I was told it by a senior practitioner who'd got it from Sigong. Or he'd got it from one of Sigong's friends who told him. Maybe Sigong wouldn't have talked about this. But apparently Sigong had a friend who had a gambling problem, and he was in debt to this sort of a crime lord type gentleman who was going to have his goons do a lot of damage to the guy. So he begged Sigong to go with him to talk to this guy. And they went. Sigong interceded, as it were, on the part of his friend. The boss said, okay, I'll give him a bit more time to pay, and must have changed his mind as they left. He said to two of his boys, you know, straight out of a Bruce Lee movie, skitch him, go and give those two a lesson. So apparently these two guys came running out to Sigong and his friend to beat him up, and Sigong just palm strike to the chins, bop, bop, plop, plop. Both of them hit the ground. One strike, one knocked out gangster. So that's a good story, and that's really what fighting is about for us. That's why we spend so much time thinking about the internal, using the subconscious mind to develop power rather than just consciously becoming strong, you know, building up strong muscles, relax speed, all the things you can do with normal mind, normal muscle. But we want abnormal power, because it wants to be the power of like a wild animal or an insect striking, like a mantis, or a bird, you know, the crane, or the tiger, or even the panda. With that one strike, one defeat, you might say, we'll leave out the kill. That's what you want to do. You want to hit people, boom, on the chin with a palm strike, pow, with everything in it, with, you know, chum Q, Bill G, whatever you're capable of, and they go bye-byes. Or drop it into their body, drop it into their solar plexus, kick their legs out from underneath them. Dangerous stuff. You want to be sure of what you're doing before you hurt people that bad, because you'll regret it if you kill somebody, if they weren't a real bad guy. Even then, maybe you'll regret it. But that's it. That's the story. That's the point. And I'm definitely going to do a longer video about this subject. And there's a book called Zen in the Way of Archery by Eugene Herrigel from the 30s. Bit of a controversial book because the guy ended up in the 40s joining the Nazi Party apparently, which is bizarre. But when he wrote this book in the 30s, it was just purely about Japanese archery and the story of how this master trained him. And it's a book Bruce Lee was really fascinated by, and I've got a Jeet Kune Do magazine with a sort of facsimile of Bruce Lee's copy of this with heaps of underlining and notes. And Bruce saw the connection between Wing Chun and this approach, and it's in that book that the story of where Bruce got, you know, I don't hit, it hits all by itself. That's the book where he got that idea from, as far as I know. Certainly in that book. And yeah, I'll go more into that. And also my next video, which you'll see, will be my interview with legendary Karen Armstrong, one of our most long-term Wing Chun practitioners here in Australia. Great Wing Chun lady, and one of the very best. And she also co-authored Sifu Jim's Blue Book and Red Book about Wing Chun, which are excellent books, back in the late 70s, I think it was. And she's involved in a lot of things, but you'll see that in the video. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you next time. Good luck with your Wing Chun.